Hello, welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Tuesday, another different lineup. Lawrence has returned. We've got Boise standing in for young Patrick, and before anybody asks, he's not ill with a coffin. He's got a prior engagement today, so he's not here to talk about the hoops. We're going to be talking about young Abada on the wing and the wee man doing his thing up front. Gents, how are we on this fine Tuesday?
What an honour, Declan, mate. This is the first ACSOM show me and you have done together, mate. So I am honoured to be in your presence, big boy.
There you go. One day Ange Postecoglou, next day Russell Boyce. Big time. Hanging out with a big time. Gents, we'll kick off with the man of the moment on Sunday, the guy that scored the winner. Jota, 22-year-old Benfica player, a boy that we brought in quite late on in the window. And he's certainly kicked onto a game, 7 appearances for Celtic, 2 goals, 2 assists. Lawrence, going to fire this one over to you. The buyout option on him in June next year is £6.5 million. We're going to touch on what Ange said about signings in January from Japan and the J League. How important is it going to be to probably move mountains to bring in Jota from Benfica more than anything else?
Listen, there's definitely a player in there. I think he looks better on the right. He's probably suffered a wee bit. He's been playing on a bit on the left for us, just due to, I think, our numbers. We don't have many options, but the wee man's got the skill. There's no doubt. He's got an eye for goal. Yeah, he's one of the standouts in the team. You've got to sign him. We brought in £53 million so far this year. I know we've spent about 23. So, I know it said we lost 11 million in the books, but there's still a bit of money to come in. I think that there should be money there to sign a player of that. And if you're agreeing that as the buyout fee, you're not agreeing it because it's unachievable for you to pay it. You're agreeing it because, right, we can afford to pay that if the wee man lives up to our expectations. And I think he has so far.
Yeah, no, totally. Boise, one of the comments coming right away is too expensive. Now, to go back to January, sorry, not January, just a few months ago, in the summer, and look at what we had in terms of assets. Edward left, Ayer left, Christie left, and it just looked as if there was a squad there that you weren't really going to have any big players that you were going to, be able to sell on in a few months' time or a few years' time. I think Jota and Kyogo and Abada, all three of them probably fit into the category of a long-term plan. You'll get good players out of them at this moment in time, but in the future we'll be able to sell. It's a no-brainer for me. What about you?
I think when it comes to £6.5 million, I think that's a reflection of where Scottish football sometimes is, Declan. £6.5 million is absolute pennies to a lot of championship clubs down south in England. Across Europe, in fact, £6.5 million. Everyone raised their eyebrows at Club Bruges signing Jack Hendry for £8.5 million, for example. But only in Scotland do we raise our eyebrows at that sort of money. I don't actually happen to think that is I think that's the sort of investment Celtic have lacked in making, Declan, if I'm honest to you. Whilst we had a period of dominance, there still seemed to be a reluctance to speculate, to accumulate. And you look at the Edward deal, with hindsight, and hindsight's going to look very, very favourably on Odsonne Edward. He won a barrel load of trophies, was our top scorer X amount of years. He was a record club signing, and with only 12 months left, still left for double. Now, if that's not a blueprint to follow, then I don't know what is. I think £6.5 million in today's market is fantastic value. And just on Jota, I think he's been a brilliant addition to the team. I agree with Lawrence 100%. What we've seen so far, we like, and more of the same, please.
Yeah, more of the same, please, and hopefully, he can keep himself fit. I don't know if he's been selected to go away with under 20. No, he would be away under 21s. So, it'd be just at Lennox there, I imagine, doing his training. I'll be in there with the rest of the boys. So hopefully he can avoid picking anything up in training. Sorry, that was a wee bit of mental maths there. That's what happens when you're doing a journalism degree. You don't do any numbers. To look at the guy who was partnering him up front, and his first touch on Sunday was, he put the ball in the back of the net with his chest. But again, if you look at the stats so far, it's 11 appearances for Kyogo, it's 8 goals, and it's 1 assist. Now, there probably was a bit of concern from some people that he wasn't getting in the ball too much early stages of the game. When Ange made the subs late on in the game, he moved him out to that left-hand side, where I think he's wasted. But to throw this one over to Lawrence, I think, a lot of the time you get joy is breaking the lines. We saw the goal, it's a breaking of the lines. Rogic plays that killer ball through to Montgomery. It's a cutback across and Jota bangs it into the net. In terms of breaking the lines, and it's a great first goal, by the way, in terms of using the width. I know it's our midfielder out there whipping the ball in, but I think when we come back after the international break, I think that's something I want to see more in Celtic's play. What about yourself, Lawrence?
Definitely, mate. See, when that ball got played out, I was just thankful it wasn't the Tynecastle linesman, flagging it for non-existence offside. But listen, it's joy that they were going to get knocking it across. I thought Kyogo, I think he had a quiet game by his standards against Aberdeen. I do agree he's wasted out on the left. Maybe we could have tried pushing Monty up further up, leave him in the middle. Ajeti just didn't seem to do much at all when he came on 2 touches of the ball, one just outside our box, one in their half. I know we're hampered by injuries, but he just doesn't look to be doing it at all, does he? And I don't know when we're going to see much of the Greek boy, or when do we give him a run out to see what he's like. But yeah, we need to find a way of breaking teams down. We need to get the fast moving passing going, but I'm not too sure how you do that when you keep getting fouls given against you for nothing. Aberdeen, it was every minute, more than every minute that they had, or just less than every minute they had the ball every 50 odd seconds.
82 seconds, Burns. Every 82 seconds we fouled when they had the ball.
Yep.
Well, you've got to take the time that the ball would have been out of play, so it drops to under a minute. You're looking and going, wow, this is crazy. It's a crazy start, and it's. But when you saw some of the Aberdeen players, it was just the slightest touch fall over. They wouldn't have got a penalty in the penalty box for that kind of slight touch. Why are they getting a free kick? Over at the touchline for it. There's literally nothing in a lot of these Bobby Madden decisions. It's not like Bobby to get decisions wrong.
We'll come to Bobby Madden, the Airdrie fan later on, Russell. But on what we're chatting about there, breaking lines and in terms of different stages of play. When Giacomakis came on against Leverkusen, he looked at a player that was going to come on and ruffle players up. Fingers crossed we obviously keep Kyogo fit. I think he's going to be joining up now with the Japanese squad during this international break. We really hope that he does come back fit, because I think he's integral to the system that Ange's wanting to play. But on Giacomakis, if he's to come into the side, spoke there about breaking the lines, would you imagine a different approach to play? Because he's going to be a big guy that looks as if he can hold the ball up in the air, which we've yet to see a Celtic striker do this season. Do you think that is a possibility that whoever plays that old traditional number 9 position will need to adapt to suit them more than anything else? Because Ajeti just, he's obviously a penalty box striker, but in terms of his movement, I think it was last week against Dundee United, it was 17 odd touches. Is it a case of just mixing your game up a bit depending who's up top for you?
Yeah, I think there's many ways to skin a cat, Declan. I think that's something that perhaps in the Monday Club we've been accused of being negative, where I think we were always just trying to promote the fact that don't just play one way, particularly in Scotland. And to be fair, a lot of the retorts have been that the options weren't fantastic, open to or available to Ange. I think when you bring in someone like Giacomakis, when you actually look at his reel on YouTube, he scores a complete variety of goals. But the ones that I was most interested in were the headers, and were the almost slide tackle goals from 3 yards out, if you like, shoving someone out the road, throwing his body in there. Because I don't think we've really got that right now. And we definitely need more options up top. But on Kyogo being, right now, he's far and away the number 1. As for Ajeti, I'm not convinced he's going to make the cut in the long run. I really don't. The only chance he had was if we played with 2 up front. I wonder when he came up to Celtic, he presumed, such as our dominance when he signed, he was going to be paired with Odsonne Edouard or another. I think up front he looks a lonely figure. It doesn't look like he's got the attributes to his game required to play Ange's system. And you only need to look at the difference since Kyogo's came back in the last 2 games. Albeit he didn't score against Leverkusen, but the whole team feeds off how he starts it all. For me, when the other team's got possession, Kyogo then dictates how our team react to that, and he leads from the front in a brilliant way. He's your first defender, if you like. You don't get that from Ajeti. Giacomakis is an unknown quantity right now, but I certainly think he's going to give more questions to the opposition than what Ajeti's offered so far. Ajeti. I'm contradicting myself every 2 seconds here, Declan.
Yeah, well, we know you like buses, and I think you could probably call Kyogo our conductor, but that's the orchestra, no, the bus. But he's chasing play. To me, it's infectious. He wasn't always getting the ball to feet. And Sunday, watching him up there, but he kept moving, he kept wanting to get the ball. And I think, as you say, Russell, the energy he brings to that Celtic team is far and above anything that we've seen Ajeti give you. You could just tell last Thursday evening it wasn't 100%, but just in terms of breaking the lines and the chances he was created, he was really unlucky with the one that the goalkeeper basically sees with his big toe. But he just, he is infectious, and I think he's so crucial and important to how we play. Now, in terms of how we play and in terms of the system that Ange's got, it's obviously, the blueprint is a 4-3-3. It's 2 fullbacks coming inside. It's a number 6 holding, and it's an 8, a 10, and it's a 3 up front. Now, Lawrence, we saw a lot of different personnel being used in that midfield. We saw James McCarthy being used in there, but obviously he had COVID issues. We don't really know what we're getting with James McCarthy yet. A person that we've been told didn't have a proper pre-season. Saw the same 3 players until Callum got injured, getting used time and time again in that midfield. But on Sunday, the person who I wanted to play in there got the chance in there, beat on. And I thought for the first half, he did fade in the second half. I think that was though a collective in the team that a lot of them faded in the second half. He was really unlucky as well, beaten not to score at the beginning of the game. But as a number 6, is it a case that we're going to just need to play the natural kind of defensive type midfielder in there? Because again, it was somebody that wanted to take the ball out from the back, which I think in that system you really need when we're putting ourselves under pressure and the ball's getting played about in such tight areas.
Yeah, I mean, listen, for me, the midfield 3, I'd have beaten Calmark and McCarthy if everyone's fit. I think Turnbull's, I'm not too sure how he keeps getting picked. If anyone was getting, I mean, I thought both Turnbull and Rogic would get dropped, but I thought Turnbull would have been dropped before Rogic. Rogic's got a bit of magic when it comes off the bench. But yeah, I think beating sitting in there's definitely, I think, our best option. I think Callum's wasted when he sits further back. He's much better further forward. Going back to Ajeti, he get his national call up again. Maybe he's someone that will be trying to move on the transfer window, isn't it? Generate some more funds. And just touched on his eye on Japan. I think we've all seen enough of him to say, look, it's just not going to work at Celtic. The boy's obviously of a standard. He's Swiss international. Try and move him on. But yeah, midfield, I'd have been beaten in there all day long. Natural number 6. It made us look a bit more solid, less porous. I thought. I understand that's from Bayer Leverkusen to Aberdeen. We're going to look less porous. It's a different standard opposition, but I think it gives us a bit. He should have scored. It does give us a bit of height as well, doesn't he? He should have put that away. So both in our box and their box, we are particularly bad cross balls into our box. I think, beating gives us another bit of height in our box. But I think for my midfield 3, with just now, if everyone's fit, beating McGregor, McCarthy.
Boycie, what about yourself? I mean, we spoke there about number 6s and just kind of playing that natural player. And maybe when you look at games like last Thursday evening against Bayer Leverkusen, you might look to even, pull Callum a wee bit back and play that kind of 2 controllers, something that Brendan spoke about this second season with Browning and Cham. Just in terms of 2 players that can break up the game, something that, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer doesn't do too well. He's not doing too many things well just now at Manchester United, but he's playing Fred and McTominay in there just to kind of get that two controller ideas. I think Chelsea's another side that do that. In terms of those big European games, would you prefer to see us go with like 2 kind of number 6s in there to just have a wee bit more bite in midfield and break up play? And then in games like this, domestically in the league, just have that number 6 sitting, the natural number 6, and let McGregor do his thing, because to me, McGregor just looks so much more comfortable as the old kind of traditional 8, pinging passes, moving about and being what I describe as Callum McGregor's our metronome in midfield.
No, I think it's a brilliant point, Declan. I think Colin Watt, you've got to give him his due at the weekend, and he went, before the game, he says, we're playing a 6, an 8 and a 10 in midfield. It's the first time we've done that this season. And I felt there was a difference in the team. Now, it's brilliant when you're going forwards, when you've got Rogic and Turnbull together, Declan, right? That's brilliant. But the fact of the matter is, we set up against Leverkusen with those 2 in midfield, a top European side. And for me, with hindsight, obviously there's a bit of hindsight, but even before the game, you could kind of say that was never going to work. I actually thought Sunday was so satisfying for me as a victory because Ange did adapt for me. I'm not saying that to be all. I always said he needed to adapt. I don't mean it like that. I just feel that the balance of the midfield made me feel more confident going into the match, if that makes sense. And I think it's something that's going to need to be adopted. You have to sometimes play the fixture, Declan. You know, you can't just always go, my philosophy wins out. You know, in the long run, my philosophy will win. Hopefully, I thought Sunday was an example of what can be achieved when you actually do play the opposition, you play the fixture, and you go, maybe there's more balance required in the midfield. And I take a point with playing 2 6s at times. But if you can get joy out of playing, you know, hopefully McCarthy gets fit. And then you're looking at him, I would like to think, overtaking Beaton. Is that fair? You know, I don't mean
you would
that.
hope so. But we've watched Boise, you know, near Beaton for a long time in a Celtic jersey. We've watched him for the past 4 years be executed as a centre half. Last season and this season we saw major mistakes in him. Don't know if that's just because he was playing, you know, at centre half or not, but we know he's got a mistake. We know he's not, you know, the most technically gifted of players. He's a squad player to me and always has been. And you would hope that, you know, an English Premier League player that you're talking about, James McCarthy, would be, you know, the solution in there, wouldn't you?
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think as well, like I've said, I've kind of alluded to before, the investment that Celtic have made in James McCarthy is quite astonishing for someone with his injury record. But to flip it, I also do believe that he is a top player, you know, when he is fully fit. And I just think that Celtic are going to need to back up that investment with giving him, you know, the jersey once he gets up to speed. But in the meantime, credit where credit's due for Neil Beaton, because he actually had a very good game, I felt, on Sunday, particularly first half, as you alluded to, Declan.
Yeah, no, I thought he did. And, you know, in the second half, I thought he was poor. But I thought in the first half, he played the game well. He broke up bits of play. And I think he gave Carter Vickers and Stafford a bit of an outlet because, you know, at times we desperately lack somebody wanting to take a bit of responsibility and take the ball out from the back when we're playing about it, playing about with the ball in there. But in terms of, you know, the actual game, a lot of people during the week, you know, many Celtic fans have said we need to win football matches. It's not a case of, you know, good performances. We're not really bothered about good performances at this point in time. We want to win games. Jota, funnily enough, is in the front page of the Herald today saying, you know, we'd rather play well than win football matches, which again, I don't like when these comments come out. Not a big fan of them, but, you know, both would be great. Play well and win football matches. But we did win ugly. And Lawrence, is it a case now that we adapt game by game, that he looks at Pittodrie? Yeah, it wasn't the most comfortable, but, you know, it's a win. It's 3 points. It gets the monkey off the back of not winning since Valentine's Day. And then we get a big Ange Loving at the end. So surely all is good when that happens and we win a football game like that.
Big Ange, mate. Yes. I know he's your mate. You like to hang out with him in the city centre.
I don't know about mate. He did call me mate, mind, but I just think that's an Aussie thing. So I'll work on it, though. I will work on it.
Listen, Ange's got to be happy. It's 3 points. He's starting to get his players back. You know, he's probably more frustrated than us. You know, Juranovic looks like a class signing for him. Comes in, looks good for a few games. He's out injured. Don't know what's happening with Big Julian. You know, it just seems that it's always next week, and it's the same way with wee Jamesy. But hopefully after an international break, we're seeing those 3 players in the squad. I think they'd make a difference. You know, I think that's 3 players that start for anyone else in the league. Gives us decent options. You know, as well as Tony Ralston's done it right back. I don't think he's as good as Juranovic. You know, centre half. I think Julian on his game, if he can get back to his best, is our best centre half. You know, and James Forrest is just modern day Celtic legend. You know, Abada's done well out on the right, but he blows hot and cold. But I suppose he's only just turned 20, hasn't he? He's a guy we can maybe use up front. You know, as an option, but we're having to stick him out on the right, aren't we? You know, because we're limited on the left and the right. Yacht's covering the left, where I don't think is the best use of him. Maybe you know, get Montgomery sometime out on the left, but yeah, but at least we're starting to get options back now. As you touched on it, you know, it's a win away from home. It's 3 points. We're getting hard away grounds in the middle of a European run. Unfortunately, it just just the way it's run. You know, for us as a club, unfortunately, we've had these kind of hard venues to go to. But, you know, 3 points is 3 points. And I think, you know, as much as Jota says he wants to play well, I'd play badly every day of the week if we get 3 points in every game. It is about, at the end of the day, you're playing for 3 points, you're not playing for plaudits. You know, it's, as Bruce would say, what the points make. You know, it's prizes. You know,
and at the end of the season, it's all about prizes. You won't remember the games exactly that you maybe played well in and lost, but you'll remember the games that you went up and you just get the job done and that's it. And at the end of the season, you've got silverware to show for it, and that's something that, you know, it's a mark of champions, grinding out results, getting those wee 1-0, 2-1 victories, which is something I think a lot of Celtic fans thought it's either going to be rock or bust for Ange. We're either going to, you know, do teams 3 or 4-0, or we're going to lose 1-0, where it's going to, you know, we're just going to put in the performance. But we saw a very different approach to the game. We did lose our way in the second half. I'll be honest, and I didn't see where the second goal was going to come from. I thought when the subs came on, I thought, don't know where this is going, but we did keep going to the end, which is something Ange says in that clip that we all seen. We keep going to the end, which we did do. And boys, I want to just kind of contrast that result at Pittodrie, same venue, 7 years ago on the 9th of November, when Virgil van Dijk scored that very late header. And we got the Ronnie Roar for the first time. We get the Ronnie Roar and we get the Ange Hulk. I'm going to call it the Ange Hulk on Sunday.
I like that.
The Ange Hulk. I think there's going to be a lot of similarities possibly between these both games in terms of looking at it as a collective going forward. How big in terms of the mentality in that dressing room is that victory on Sunday going forward now? Because the Monkeys off the back are not winning away from home. I think they're probably mentally damaged as a side from what they've went through. There's still a core group there that's went through a terrible rut of games. How big is that result going to be on Sunday going forward until, you know, we get to that January transfer window? Because I think that's going to be the point everybody's wanting to stop at and see what we add to the squad at this point in time.
I thought it was the, you know, last chance saloon, to be honest with you. I think if he'd lost the result there, I thought the knives will be out, you know, the wolves will be at the door. But they did it, and that's what I'm absolutely delighted about. For me, it's the most satisfying victory of the season. I get the comparisons. Obviously, other people have compared it to Lenny's spell when, you know, at Kilmarnock at Rugby Park when it was 3-0, and, you know, compared it to that. I see both similarities that you make there, Declan. I really do. Ange had to win away from home. It was as simple as that. We know he beat Jablonec, but they were no great team at all. In fact, the 2 goals we conceded away to them were more concerning than the actual 4 we scored. But Sunday we've seen a different approach, as you say. We've seen a wee bit of, you know, strength and mentality that had been perhaps lacking. And I felt for the first time you've seen Ange with the lineup saying, I'm going to need to mix it up a wee bit here. Rogic and Turnbull experiment maybe came to an end after Thursday. Now, I know he came out and said after Thursday, I won't change my approach. And I think there was jaws on the floor, Declan, when he said that, you know. Maybe now I'm beginning to see what people were saying when they said it was a bit of cloak and dagger there. He was just, you know, he's playing mind games, because he did actually change it on the Sunday. And fair enough, that's his prerogative. But we can only comment on what your manager says. That's all we can react to. You know, we can't go, oh, he means something else completely. But you can only go by what he said. And I think it was a really good talking point when that was brought up on Friday and Saturday's shows. Obviously, he did change it on Sunday, and he got his just rewards. And you did see a team that played to the end. And I thought the desire for Jota was just fantastic. You know, these are the type of players you look at from the outside in a naive way, and you think they've not got that. They're not going to have the dig. They're not going to get it. And yet Jota and Kyogo, for me, the 2 guys with the prettiest hair, the prettiest football, most flair, are the 2 guys to me that seem, out of all the signings, that seem completely driven to getting the points. Although Jota's goal completely contradicts those comments that you just quoted. And I've got to say, I don't like those quotes, and I would dare say that they reminded me a wee bit of Jeremy Frimpong.
Well, hopefully, again, it's just mind games. It's just chatting the media, and it's just saying stuff. Because again, when I looked at the team sheet that came out last Thursday, I've obviously not been on since last week. I was shocked to see McGregor and Kyogo in that team, because they played it down all week. But yeah, they might get a bit of game time, but we don't really know. And there they are. And I'm sure Bayer Leverkusen are probably taken aback by that as well when they had a look at that team, because they wouldn't have expected Kyogo and from comments I've read in the media, McGregor is well known in German football, and they do know all about him. But to turn to comments in the media, to turn to Ange Postecoglou, really interesting article at the weekend came out, and when he was talking about the January transfer window, he has called this a 2 or 3 window process. I would totally agree with that. I think, it's not his fault that we are in this position at this moment in time. That is on the hierarchy at the club, putting him in that position where it needs to be a 2 or 3 window process because of the major players that we lost in the last window and how much we've had to bring in and how much you can bring in one window. But one of the things he said in this article is we've identified targets and begun discussions before we get to January so that we can conclude deals a lot quicker than we did in the previous window. Lawrence, music to every Celtic fan's ears. When was the last time we pulled off a really good, January transfer window? I'll be going back to Robbie Keane is probably the best major signing in a January transfer window over a decade ago.
Certainly the last time I kind of turned up at Celtic Park to see a signing, a January transfer window signing at almost midnight. Yeah, listen, we don't all agree. I think Kyogo is an Ange signing. I think Jota coming in late, any of the late ones are probably in signings. But on Kyogo alone, if there's another 1 or 2 in Japan like that he's identified for, he's going to know his squad a lot better now for positions that will weaken, that can play his style of football. Ideal. You'd expect him to be, or you'd expect a professional club to be talking to players all the time. What's going on, where are our weaknesses, who might we sell, what are going to be our options when that happens. Probably a bit harder for us. We don't have a head of recruitment or a director of football, but I'm sure that's probably might be getting looked at. I don't know. But yeah, we've got to start planning early and have a few options. And don't leave it to the last day to bring them in. I think that, we're 3 or 4 players short, aren't we? We're down in last year's numbers. We're down in last year's quality. Last year didn't turn out well for us. So to expect better results, I think we need to bring some better players in. If Ange can get, I would say probably somebody else at left back. As much as I've liked Taylor, and he seems solid enough. I'm not too sure if he's going to fit what Ange wants. Although Ange was praising him early in the season, still think that we need a bit more steel in midfield and another option up front. What was it? 4 strikers out, 2 in. I'd like to see us try and move Ajeti out and bring in maybe another one. If Ajeti goes, bring in another 2 strikers up front, give us some options. Because the injury crisis has shown us how kind of threadbare we are. We do really need people adoring it. And Ange said it last transfer window, didn't he? He says, I've not done a good enough job of convincing the board how many players we need in. And listen, it's come to pass for us. We've been dropping points because we are threadbare.
Yeah, and I think, to take it on a smaller scale, if you look at any of the top English sides, and obviously we're not anywhere near that level of a Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester United, Man City, whoever, but they've got at least 2 players in each position that are, on par or just, needing for each other, that if one drops out, they can bring another superstar in. Of course, we're not at that level, but there is other clubs around Europe that are at that level of just, if your left back drops out, you've got a good enough left back to come in and do the job that is vying still for that place. Boyce, coming in other comments he said was it was also going to be a 2 or 3 window process. We're looking at January at the moment. He said, we know the areas we need to bolster. It's about getting more players that I believe can play the type of football we want to play. And there is a mentality attached to that. It's about the type of personalities who are going to be brave and really ambitious. What do those comments say to you? He's obviously looking ahead. But we don't, again, we don't have a director of football and we don't have anybody above him making these transfers. So I would assume it's him going out. But after the Kyogo transfer from Vissel Kobe, surely the Celtic board can trust him to go and pick out some decent players from this market and get them in.
You'd like to think so, Declan. There's 2 sides to it. For me, if you're being honest, out the 12 signings we made, I'll ask you, in fact, how many do you think Ange signed?
Very little. In terms of what he actually went out and scouted himself, maybe 1. Because I think some of the rest are probably, the way probably Celtic work it as a list of players, like Joe Hart was probably another 4 or 5 goalkeepers and asking him, what one would you prefer? And he probably does that. Which I think a lot of clubs do. It's not an issue. But if you go back to like Brendan 5 years ago, the man that we mentioned too much in this podcast, when he came in, he brought in Scott Sinclair, Kolo Toure, Christian Gamboa, who were all players, and Doris De Vries, that he definitely identified and wanted at the club. They weren't Celtic signings, they were Brendan Rodgers signings.
So here's the point, though. When Postecoglou took over on a, you'd think there was a honeymoon period at some point when he's first started. There's a lot of, backing that he's getting, you would like to think anyway. Yet he only gets 1 out of 12 signings. Come January, if results, and I obviously hope that Aberdeen was the kickstart for the season, but what he gets to do in January or the window after, this 2 to 3 window process, will be dictated by how he gets results on the pitch in between those windows. It's quite obvious that if Celtic only gave Ange, when he first came in the job in a massive rebuild, 1 player he identified, I'm not convinced, and I certainly don't believe, based on previous Januaries, that Celtic are going to give you this, fantastic transfer window that we're all hoping for that builds on Ange's vision. The only way he can force their hand a wee bit is if he goes on a win and run between now and then, and obviously you want Kyogo to be front, left and centre of that, on the stage, because that then backs up his argument even further. I have concerns that if he only got 1 guy in the summer when he's trying to fight to try and get us back the title, why on a patchy run of form, as it stands at this present moment, by the way, I'm not saying it will be come January, but why on earth they would then give him carte blanche in a January transfer window when they're notorious, let's be honest, for last day loans in January?
Yeah, it is a fair point, and it has been a structure that we've seen. Again, if you go back to last December when Julian cracks his knee off the post, we're going to be coming on to talk about Chris Julian, but we knew then that we needed a centre half. Not one appeared. Frimpong left for, what was it, 11 odd million quid to bring in an Everton loanee. I don't know if that again was just due to the situation that we're in, that they probably knew that Neil Lennon wasn't going to be at the club for much longer and they didn't want to bring in much. But again, that isn't a managerial issue. That's again the board in terms of forward planning and looking at what we're going to be heading towards. But yeah, I don't know if there's possibly was a hesitance in there, that they didn't want to buy too much from that market in case it never worked out. But as you say, the fruits of they've came. You see how good a player Kyogo is, and how he said that he was 1 player in the league that he knew he could definitely trust, and that's why he brought him in. And I think if there was any hesitance from the board in terms of giving him a backing in the J League, it's there to see. And as you say, it's I think if Postecoglou wasn't to get those players, again, but we're heading down a road that we don't want to go down here, because for this.
But the results will be balanced with that, Declan. That's the thing. Whilst Kyogo might be a success in isolation, they will balance it with results, and what results Ange's brought in. That's my point.
They will, and it's we will judge it differently as fans from what they will judge it as. And again, I don't think they've got as much a sentimentality that they would have had it been a Neil Lennon or a Gordon Strachan, where there seemed to be an undying loyalty to them, which is why they hesitated so much of it. But in terms of January, maybe looking forward too much, we've got 4 players. You've already touched on a few of them, Lawrence, that are going to maybe return to the side from injury. Greg Taylor, Chris Julian, James Forrest and Josip Juranovic. How many of those guys slot into your starting 11 going forward?
I would say Juranovic definitely takes a right back slot. In fact, all 4 of them, I would say, are fitting back on their game. Forrest definitely starts over Abada. Julian's our best centre half, and I think Taylor's our best option at left back. Not to say that we should be looking to improve upon him, but I think those are 4 starters if they're all fitting on their game.
Boyce, do you agree with that? 4 of them right in for you, or is it a case of wait and see? Because it seems Vickers came in and loaned from Spurs. You'd expect him to get a good run of games up here at Celtic. Starfelt has spent 4 million quid on. You'd expect him to play. Mm-hmm. So where does Julian go in there? You've got Abada. Yeah, he's only 20, but to me, he looks very good and he gives you a very different option to James Forrest, and it's a bit of competition for James Forrest that we've not seen in over 4 years. I'd imagine Juranovic, for me, would come in at right back. It's no disrespect to Tony Ralston, but you spent that money in a Croatian internationalist. That's the guy you would want to play there. And then Taylor, saw Montgomery being used there. His comments the other day surrounding Liam Scales, the manager, said with Greg Taylor out and Liam Scales not quite ready yet, he was the one we were going to rely on when he was talking about Greg Taylor. He was talking about Adam Montgomery. Is it possible that Scales might be the man for left back, or do you think he'll stick with Greg Taylor when he comes back from injury?
I found the Scales comments quite interesting. I don't understand how he's not ready. That seems to be an ongoing issue at Celtic, though. They sign players and they're not quite ready, and it seems to take ages to integrate them into the first team. As for the other positions, I think Lawrence is pretty much bang on. I think left back, I'm not as convinced of Taylor, but right back you would expect Juranovic, and I agree with you, Declan. No disrespect to why can I not think of his name? The right back. I'm having a complete
Ralston.
I thought it began with a T. I don't know what happened to me there. Sorry, Ralston. I feel
T for Tony.
Apologies. Tony. That's what I was thinking of. Tony Ralston. Apologies, Tony. But I think Juranovic will take his spot. I was talking about Forrest the other day. Him and Abada. I think Forrest being back to full fitness is good for them both. For me, Forrest's best season was when Paddy Roberts pushed him to the limit. Yep. Right, and Forrest rose to the challenge. I also see that flipping a wee bit. I think Abada will learn from James Forrest, will watch James Forrest, and then want to be better than James Forrest. If you actually look at Abada's numbers in isolation, you look at him as a player at 20 years old, just turned 20 on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Absolutely outstanding, considering he's never been in Scotland before, played in Scotland. It's a new league, new system, new team, new cause. And he is completely, for me, his numbers are absolutely brilliant for that age. And I do think when Forrest comes in, that'll be a great mentor for him, but will also push Forrest that wee bit further as well, similar to what Paddy Roberts did. So it's a win-win in that position.
Yeah, this is a really good point. Somebody's come in the comments from Brown Warrior. He said Forrest brings a defensive quality Abada hasn't developed yet. I think that was shown to me on Thursday night against Leverkusen when we were playing inverted fullbacks. You needed the winger to drop in if the two fullbacks were going to go back in, and it just left big gaps in the team. And I think that might be a fair point in terms of how we look at, the wingers in the system are executed, because you need that bit to drop back. But again, that will be up to the manager, and I'm sure he'll make the decision on it. But I'll be interested to see what he does at left back, because again, Montgomery, we don't want a case like Stephen Welsh is in just now, where you play a player for so much, then they just completely drop out and then we don't see them again. Because in terms of development, it's something that Celtic I don't think do very well, is if you're going to play a young lad in there, you need to give him game time. It's imperative that he gets game time. You can't just put Welsh out in the cold and that's it, because he won't develop at all, which is one of the problems with Tony Ralston. But Ralston 22, but how much game time did he actually have in those years from breaking into the side, making his debut against St Johnstone to up until that point in time? So I think that's something they need to look at. And again, it's with Montgomery. It's a great cutback from Montgomery, but I think personally that Montgomery's a better left winger than his left back. Lawrence, would you make of that?
Yeah, no, I think he's definitely better further forward. I mean, that's where he's played most of his football. He's got potential at left back, but it doesn't matter which position you prefer him in. He's going to need some game time throughout the season. Whether he's your starter or he's a boy that you're looking bringing on is different. I think Taylor would start in front of him. Montgomery is then get the option to come on for your left back or your left winger, depending on how the game's going. He does give you options. He's really confident. I've always confident going forward with it. Defensively, he's not shown too much for me yet, but maybe he'll show more the more he plays. But we definitely need a plan how to get people in it. And I don't know if they sit down and plan it and go, listen, we want so many academy players to get so many minutes in a season. So, if you're 3-0 up, you don't need to be going for 4th and 5th goal. Maybe give two young boys a bit of a run out. Let's see what they've got and see how they stand as instead for the rest of the season. Because there will be times you come down to being threadbare, and rather than turn around to a guy that you haven't seen play or have 0 minutes in first team, at least they might have 4 or 5 20-minute cameo appearances. You know them a bit better. They've been bled into the side. So, we do need to have a plan. But for me, it's Taylor. I think he starts before Montgomery left back. Keeping him out of the Scotland team's only Robertson and Tierney. It's not like his stats are good for Celtic as well in terms of assists and the amount of times he's on the winning team, the amount of times when he plays and we win. So I don't know whether that's more luck or whatever, but certainly if it is luck, it's good to be lucky, isn't it? But yeah, I can't see you'd start Montgomery over Taylor if Taylor's fit, but he's got another 6 weeks out, hasn't he? So a long way from that. We've got after international break. Is it Motherwell, and then Hibs?
Motherwell.
So
it's Motherwell, then St Johnstone, the game against Ferencváros, and it's away to Easter Road, then we're at home to Livingston after that.
So St Johnstone are flying. you know, Ferencváros, I don't really care about Europe. So yeah, 3 hard games in a league. Yeah, it's.
To me, the Ferencváros game is going to be really important because, I think for the squad, European football after Christmas is a must for us. And again, we can give a go to the conference, the new competition there. But if you finish third in your group, you get into. So in terms of Ferencváros, it's a team that I would like us to get revenge on and do the job against and have another game after Christmas. Because again, it's about getting tasting and getting to that barometer of where you'll be. And if you're bringing in players in January, you'd want to give them a go in Europe and see where you can go in that competition, because the draw could be quite favourable in there. Don't know if I'd fancy finish second and getting one of the Champions League dropouts. That's another story. But when we were talking about left wingers there, don't know if this could possibly be Kevin Keegan in the comments. That clip. I would love it. Love it.
Yeah.
And he said nobody more injured than Mikey Johnson. Now, Mikey's had a really bad spell in terms of injuries and being out the team. Boise, for you, is this season, has it already passed that Mikey Johnson makes an impact in this Celtic team? We saw him come on. I think that was the game against Dundee United. Came on at Livingston. Came on. That was the first time we'd seen him back. Do you still see a future for Mikey Johnson green and white hoops, or do you think it's just ran its course and he's just going to have these continuous injury issues that have really, hampered him?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're looking at options on the left, I find it quite interesting that no one really, particularly amongst the ACSOM contributors, even bring up Mikey Johnson, as an option. We either, take it for granted that he's out on the sidelines injured, or he doesn't actually come into contention, and you're thinking as competition for that place. Lawrence touched on it earlier. Maybe we could try Montgomery out there. I don't think it was anything anti-Mikey Johnson, what Lawrence was saying. It's just he's not came across his mind. That's how far away he is right now. I made a comparison the other day, and I'm gonna repeat it just for the show's benefit. Abada turned 20 on Sunday. He looks physically a far more developed specimen, whatever you want to call him. He looks like he's matured already compared to Mikey Johnson. Looks as wee as me. He doesn't look quite ready, but I think Mikey Johnson must be now 3, maybe even 4 years the senior of Abada. So I think that's like time's going to end up catching up on him. And I know he's been unfortunate with injuries, but I also worry with players like Johnston. Will he get a fair crack of the whip for the fans now? Because it seems so long since his debut to now, and the little sort of content we've seen him, the little substance, I should say, in that time that we've seen from him. I just worry if he could become, not because I want this, by the way, but I would worry if he'd become a whipping boy if things weren't going right and he was involved, just because we've not seen enough from him yet. And you're looking at Abada right now. He's got credit in the bank for all his bad performances already. He's only been at the club 2 months. Mikey Johnson, for me, is in his overdraft.
Yeah, he might possibly is in his overdraft because I've just not seen enough of him yet. But he is only 22, and again, it is probably worth sticking with just now if we can get him fit and get him as a squad player, because you're not going to get a big sell-on fee. Postecoglou might get a different tune out of him that we've just not seen yet once he gets over this injury. So we want every player in that Celtic squad to succeed. But obviously,
Johnson, if you can back a couple of seasons ago, I mean, he did look as if he had it. He was getting you a goal every
especially
4 or 5 games, wasn't it? It was
the 9 in a row season.
24 appearances, 5 or 6 goals both seasons. So he was kind of consistent in terms of appearances and numbers of goals. It's just unfortunately he's got injured and it doesn't look. It's like Stephen Klamala went away, come back bulked up. You're not seeing that kind of application for Johnston. So whether he's unable to bulk up, he's not able to carry it. He's coming back and he's looking more and more fragile every time he comes back. That's the worry. That he's just not going to be able to play more than 20 games a season or 25 games a season. I think that's the main worry with him. He's never going to be physically fit enough to carry out a full season for us.
See what we talk about quite often as well, Lawrence, right? Is see when players are injured, and I think people have alluded to it with Julian, as much as I'm not on that camp, but people have said absence makes the heart grow fonder. and you start doing a bit of revisionism on players when they've been out injured for a long term, and you build them up to be better than what they actually are, and your memory's playing tricks on you. The mad thing with Johnson is that doesn't seem to be happening. You know, you're not getting that same sort of weight of, oh, he'll be a brilliant addition when he comes back, which normally happens when it's long-term injuries. You know, you start building up their profile again, as in, oh, it'll be like a new signing. And I do feel that goes against him, not because it's his fault, but inadvertently goes against him a wee bit, when I just don't think he's going to get the fairest crack of the whip.
No, somebody's asking why we're talking about Mikey Johnson, but this is probably why we're talking about him, because I don't know, I need to check this one out, but Patrick Dolan in the comments has seen his contract expires in May the 31st, 2025, so we've still got a long time to go with Mikey Johnson. And you would just hope, I mean, again, Brown Warriors coming in, another great comment saying, Della sorted Forrest out by managing his situation better. I believe Postecoglou has the same approach. We would all prefer him to have the same approach because we want good players in our team, and there's nothing better than seeing youth players come in through the side, through the academy, and get their chance in that Celtic side. But in terms of getting their chance in the Celtic side, we're spoken about players hopefully arriving at Celtic Park come January. In terms of exits, gentlemen, who do you think could be in that Pickford van out of Celtic Park come January? Lawrence, I'll throw that one over to you. Is there anybody at this moment in time, one, you think we could get decent money from, a £5 million strike you've already touched on in Ajeti? I don't think we'll recoup that anywhere near that. Are there any players that you would like to see go out on loan?
I think I'd like to see Robertson come back for loan, but I'd like to see Ajeti go out, Barkas be sold if possible, Bain be sold if possible. I don't think either of them are going to make it. Boli was a really weird one. Why did he come in against Livingston and he wasn't any worse than anyone else in the team, and then he's completely disappeared again? It's especially when we're struggling for options at left back. But yeah, if he's not going to be part of the plans, move him if we can. But then again, with Threadbury, you've got to make sure that we're not just selling them and it's one in, one out. We've got to be adding numbers to our squad as well. But yeah, I think Ajeti, I think he's, for whatever reason, it's not going to work. Barkas and Bain the same. Boli, you've got to get 10 million for those four, surely. I don't know what we spend about 15,
I don't know.
16.
I think that would be a January window with the way it's working there, Lawrence. I think that'd be.
I think he does well with Switzerland. He's back in the national squad.
Yeah.
Well, but those are the guys that move.
Does he start for Switzerland? Because I watched Switzerland at the Euros and he was nowhere near that squad. I know he's in the squad.
He's always just back in the squad, so he's not starting, but he's back in the squad, so he's away. But that's four that I'd be saying, right, they're not going to work for us. Just move them on and get what we can. And some of them have got to be big earners. Barkas and
I'd imagine Ajeti and Barkas.
5 million. They've got to be kind of 10 grand plus a week, haven't they? They've got to be.
Easy.
They've got to be big
earners. Balling goalie wouldn't have came to Celtic from Rapid Vienna and being poor money either. He'll be in a decent wage too. Balling goalie's a weird one, Boise, because he was left out the squad on Sunday. So there was another one that was left out the squad on Sunday. I'm only worried, we can all say, want these players to move on, but again, in terms of what we would replace him with, or whether we would replace him, is the biggest concern I've got, because it's all very well in saying, I'll be Ajeti, move him on, but do you then go and buy another striker in January or loan one in? Because I just don't think we do. That's the concern, that we might move players on, but in terms of replacing them, we saw this summer, 15 went out, 12 went in, so we left ourselves short. Would we do that again in January? Yeah, we might not think some of the players at this level in time, at this point in time, are, setting the bar, but if we do shift players out that we've not seen anything from at this point in time, would you have confidence in that we'd actually replace those players?
No, absolutely not. It goes back to the point I was making earlier. It's so easy to use terms like, Ange needs 2 or 3 windows. Who's he getting the transfer windows with? A board notorious for not doing business transfer dealings well. That's where I find that argument, it just falls a wee bit flat. I'm like, remember the position he's in right now. He's only really got one signing on the table so far after the summer, when he was crying out for more publicly as well. Why is everyone so convinced that if he gets 2 more windows, we'll look great? I'm not convinced Ange gets his way as much as what we would. I think it's based on, if Ange gets his way in the next 2 windows, the team will be there. There's no evidence that'll happen. Zero. And that's the reality check, which I'm not saying is a good thing, by the way. In terms of up front, I think you've got an option with Abada. And for me, I think Abada should have been replaced Kyogo when he was out, played through the middle. If that meant tweaking it just to fit it, I would have said Abada play the Kyogo role because he was the most like-for-like replacement. And you have seen the difference to the team when Kyogo's came back in with the pace, the pressing from the front. I think Abada could have done that. And I think he's got an eye for goal as well. I'm not saying he'd be as effective as Kyogo, but I think that was a more likely replacement, which also give you some insight as to how far down the pecking order I feel someone like Ajeti is. For me, he'll be on 15k plus, Lawrence. Bolingoli will be 15k.
Well more than 15k. I don't think you come to West Ham
you don't
for 5
go to West Ham, you know?
That. No.
And then you've got
20 plus.
20 plus. Well, there you go. Fair enough. I was trying to be moderate, not make Lawrence's
I think it'll be in good money. I'll be Ajeti, definitely.
And
20
Barkas.
plus with a Peter. I'm not too sure.
That's fair, but
that 20k out to him, but
I think the argument though is here, based on what we're saying is there's a lot of substantial money being paid to players that are not going to be featured in the first team plans, going forward, realistically, or be effective when they are used. The Bolingoli call at Livingston it looks more and more bizarre now as it's went on. Not because he had a particularly bad game, by the way, that day, but it was just such a, without, excuse the pun, left field move to bring him in. It's not been backed up with any faith whatsoever since. And remember, he wasn't in the Europa League squad either. So that one for me, the ship sailed on him. I don't think he'll ever get the backing of the fans. Barkas, I think the training video with him just standing there letting balls go by him, for 2-3 minutes solid, just stood. The shots just flew by him. It was just bizarre that he was trying to burn his bridges there. The pity is we will not recoup what we have spent or anywhere near it on these guys, but we will save a heck of a lot in wages.
Yeah, just to go through a couple of the comments. One player, Brown Warriors saying could possibly come back, and he's doing really well at Crewe. There was Scott Robertson. We'll come back to Crewe. We can bring him back, and I think he's a decent quality player. I think Robertson would certainly add something to the Celtic midfield that we're maybe missing, and he's proven it just now at Crewe. It could be obviously Callum McGregor went out and loaned to Notts County and came back a really a different player that Ronnie Dyler could trust. I think Robertson at Crewe, it could be the loan deal out that he's needed and comes back firing. Somebody else is saying Nisbet would have been a perfect signing. He's fit, he knows the league, scores goals. I don't think that's might be a bit harsh to call Giacomakis a big Greek dud at this moment in time. We've not seen enough of him, but I think Nisbet probably would fit the system. Left this one at the very end of the show just to talk about, but I think it's good that you can talk about this when you win a game. You can't point to it when you lose a game. But the refereeing performance on Sunday, I thought, was absolutely appalling. And we've heard about the introduction of VAR coming to Scotland, the possible introduction of VAR coming to Scotland. Well, we're talking about Sunday here just because we've won, Lawrence, because if you don't do it when you've not won, that's getting used as your excuse. But I would rather do it. Well, I don't watch any other team apart from the Hoops, so I would rather just talk about us on Sunday. But 27 fouls Celtic were penalised for. It's the same referee that in the league opener of the season didn't send off Andy Halliday for a bad challenge in Callum McGregor. As at the time, Russell, after a game, that you've went away and won that you call it out, because there was one at the end, but I was absolutely baffled. Don't know who it was that had his arms completely wrapped around Ajeti, and Madden gave absolutely nothing for it. So is it the time that you do win games that you can go and talk about this? We're going to go into the VAR as well, because is VAR going to be the solution, or do we just need full-time refs first before we even look at VAR? Because the incompetence that some of these people have is absolutely baffling.
No, I couldn't agree more. The performance at the weekend was shocking. I can feel Lawrence on the edge of his seat right now, all ready to go. So I'm trying to be as brief as I can. With regards to referees being full-time, there's a huge counter on that, which I think people miss. Referees' appearance money, Declan, is around £1,000, I believe. Right?
I think for the top league, yep.
You do that on top of your daily job. What are they really going to be able to put together as a package, a full-time package for a referee, more attractive than what a referee is currently paid? It's a very, very murky water. I don't mean in a bad way, but I just think referees are going to be sitting there going, no, I've got the best of both worlds here. I do my day-to-day job, and then at the weekend I get an extra grand a week. That's good money. What are refs going to be paid full time? I don't believe Scottish football can afford to pay them full time and match the current luxuries that the refs have. I don't mean luxuries in a nasty way, by the way. They obviously do their hard-earned graft through the week in their day-to-day job. Some different jobs than others, and then at the weekend they get their handsome appearance money. I don't see that formula changing because it's too much in favour of the refs. In terms of VAR, like I was saying yesterday, I think if Scottish officials were to be behind the VAR and take the cheap option, I believe the theories and the doubts that we currently have remain the exact same. I don't think that would remove any of them, because we would then be going, three of them have looked at the camera there. They've had five opportunities to look at it. They've still came up with that. Who was it that was behind there? We want their names, all that sort of thing. It will just go back to the way people talk about the panel before. I think if we're going to do VR, it needs to go all out. You need to get the European model, in which I don't see Scottish football affording. As for Sunday with the decision-making process, I'll pass over to Lawrence.
Listen, on the VAR, it doesn't need to be, the guys watching it don't need to be based in Scotland. You can see at the APL, listen, you've already got guys sitting ready to watch contentious decisions. Would you mind doing it for us? You're sharing their capacity, you're halving the cost then. You'll bring it down. As for the decisions on Sunday, 27,000 our game. Russell's talked, and why would they go full time? Well, some of them are coaching Rangers players during the week, and reffing them at the weekends. We need to bring in some rules that, say if you support a team or work for a team or coach the players during the week, you maybe shouldn't be reffing their games. We need to bring in some transparency here. It's, justice, needs to be seen to be impartial as well as actually be impartial. Whether it's professional refs or, who was the ref that was going to play COVID regs last season because he'd been away in Europe? I think it was he'd been away over to Turkey to cover one of their high-profile games because a Turkish ref, couldn't be seen to be impartial. There's no reason why we can't bring in foreign refs here. Remember during the ref strikes, we didn't seem to have any complaints. There was no, what's the phrase, honest mistakes happening then. If it's something that works, why not bring it in? I think it needs a root and branch in Scotland. It needs a clear out. You look at the stats, it's just ridiculous. 27 fouls. So, even the stats, the number of fouls throughout the season, we're not a dirty team, but the amount of fouls that get given against us, it's just absolutely crazy. How many games have we in this season?
Foreign referees, Lawrence, that argument to me makes a heck of a lot more sense to me than VAR, because I don't believe VAR will get treated by Scottish fans with that impartiality. I think we'll look behind the scenes in that, and we'll have the same arguments. Whereas for me, the foreign referees option you're talking about there just removes all that, doesn't it?
There's other countries already doing it, so you can say to Turkey, Greece, wherever, say, well, listen, we'll swap referees about here. We want the referees to be seen impartial. We can't have former Rangers season ticket holders refereeing Rangers games. We can't have, I don't know any Celtic season ticket holders that are refs, but we can't have them reffing Celtic games. It should seem kind of fairly obvious and straightforward, but apparently not in Scotland. But I think, you go to a number of associations and say, look, let's pull our refs together. Let's, get better, more professional at this. We've got foreign players playing for the teams. You can foreign refs in here. It's happened before. It happens in other countries. The VAR thing, it doesn't need to be viewed in Scotland. You'd get a studio down south. They've got people sitting there when games are on, waiting for incidents to view. You don't need to go to the cost of setting up another studio. There's a studio there. You just pay them a fee to view your incidents as and when they happen. Again, it's taken away some of the, because what's the point if it's the same refs looking at VAR again?
Exactly.
I mean, there was two tackles at Ibrox at the weekend. The Rangers boy, it's not even a yellow card, and the Hibs boy gets sent off, and it looked like fairly similar tackles. It's just utterly bizarre, So if you've got that kind of level of, shall we say, incompetence in the refs, and you look at it, yeah, I'm sure we've all seen the pictures on Twitter. He's running about in his Rangers tracksuit. on the face of it, that's got to be wrong, just for people's perception. That was the ref at Ibrox on Saturday running about his Rangers tracksuit. It's just nuts, isn't it? You know, it's. I mean, but you know, I don't see how that can be or should be tolerated. Hibs must be raging. Ryan Porteous must be raging. What, you know, 2 sendings off, same referee. I mean, if you have to look at that ref stats, you know,
6 red cards he's given in 8 games, I think it is. In Rangers games, he's officiated 6 reds to the opposition team. And then you see him quoted in a Rangers trackie. Not a good look, is it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's almost as if he would go to, I don't know, a Rangers bar and have pints with them after ref the Rangers game. But that would be just a crazy look as well, wouldn't it? You know, but you know, I'm sure the compliance officer will have a look at these appeals impartially. I don't know if he supports any team, but I'm sure he wouldn't let that interfere.
But that's, again, Lawrence, it's one of the things that Scott House says in the comments here is in England, referees need to declare what team they support. Imagine that up here. It's, you know, it's transparency that we don't have here. Another one from Kieran 1888 says refs aren't full time, and he says they're bad at their job. Wouldn't hire any of them. You know, I think there's a lack of professionalism due to what Boyce is talking about. It's that they work through the week till they get their extra at the weekend. That even good if you're the leader of a political party, leader of the opposition in Scotland. You can do your daytime job in 2 political roles and then come up and be a linesman whenever you like. So it just shows you how you can work it to your favour. But again, I think it's all about cost, and whatever's cheapest for the SFA, they will go for. In terms of this, I don't think you'll see what Boyce said, professional refs come into play anytime soon because it probably costs too much money. VAR just seems like an easy way out.
They would need to do some kind of transparent exercise and says, listen, we've spoke to the EPL. If you give the VAR down to them, this is what it's cost. And they actually start exploring these. We've spoke to foreign refs. They'll come over and do it for £600 a game. You know, I don't think they've any interest in opening up at all. I think they're quite happy with it being a closed shop up here and just saying and blaming cost. You know, I'd be surprised if you saw a document and went, listen, we spoke to the EPL. If their VAR handles it, that's what it costs us. That's what the Dutch league would charge us. That's what. I don't even think they'll go down that route. I think they just keep it closed shop again.
Well, it probably will remain closed shop. I don't see anything changing on that front anytime soon. There'll probably be plenty of decisions that we'll be able to talk about in the coming weeks and throughout the whole season on here. But thanks to everybody that's got involved in the comments. That was a good chat about where we're at just now in terms of what we're looking towards in January, in terms of what the squad's like at this make-up in time. We'll hopefully have players returning from injury. And we'll keep you up to date through this week. Obviously, Scotland play on Saturday against Israel. It's a big, big game for Scotland. We'll see some Celts come up against near Beaton. Some people probably wouldn't prefer to see some Celts in a Scotland jersey come up against near Beaton. Would rather they just sit out for the game so they're fully fit for the game at Motherwell, which will be tough. But we'll be keeping you up to date right through the run-up to that Motherwell game because there's always something going on in the world about Celtic. We're always here to have a chat. So thanks to everybody for getting involved in the comments. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to the channel. And thank you to Lawrence Conley and to Russell Boyce for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.